If you have been putting off learning a 3D modeling tool like Blender or Vectorworks or Maya or Cinema 4D or SketchUp or whatever, because you've learned that it's hard, or you've heard that it takes a lot of time to get really good at it, well, yeah, those things are true. And if you're trying to make a rendering that's highly detailed and photorealistic, yeah, that's going to take a long time to learn, but probably not as long as you think. If you really dedicate yourself to it, you could probably learn how to do pretty decent stuff after a month or two of really concentrating on it. However, you can do something like the scene that's on the screen right now, a little gray box kind of blockout of a scene very quickly. In fact, except for my little person over here standing in the light, everything in this scene was made with a default cube. And I'll show you how to make the stairs and how to make the array for the columns and things in the second video. But this first little video I want to show you is just how to set up a scene and start working with the very basic tools, those transform tools, move, rotate, scale, and start pushing some walls around and making some floors and getting a block out started so that you can render out a simple rendering like this and then take it into your favorite painting program or even print it out and do it with a pen and do a paint over on top of the geometry. So let's jump into a blank document and get started. All right, here we are in a blank Blender document. By default, there are 3 objects in a new scene. You have a default cube, you've got a camera, this kind of pyramidal thing over here, and then you've got a default light. And then I have my little guy over here too, and I'm just going to use this little move gizmo to kind of push him out of the way for now. We'll get back to him a little bit later. Now, you probably don't have this right now, so let me show you how to do that. I'm going to go ahead and grab the cube, and then come up over here and find this little blue icon here that kind of looks like a bow and arrow on there, and right next to it there's a down button. Don't click on the blue icon, just click on the little down arrow over there, and you're going to find this little checkbox that says move. And when you check that little box here, it's going to turn those little gizmos on. And those are really handy because you can just grab the handles on this and you know you're only moving in one direction at a time, and that can be very useful. So that's how you turn that view on. Also, how to navigate in the workspace is probably a useful thing. So if I want to just orbit around something selected, I'm going to hold my middle mouse button down and just click and drag, and that will allow me to move around the scene. If you hold shift and middle mouse button, you can pan back and forth, and you can use the scroll wheel on your mouse there to zoom in and out. There's lots of other ways to navigate, but those are kind of the key ones to start off with. And this little gizmo here shows you that there's a blue arrow pointing up and down, a green arrow going forwards and backwards, and a red arrow going from side to side. And that's the Z and the Y and the X axes. And if you forget those colors and what they mean, you've got this little compass over here. You can kind of see where you're looking. You can also click and drag up over here, and that will also orbit around. You have the ability to click and drag here to zoom. The hand there will pan back and forth, and then we'll talk about this camera mode here in a second, in just a moment. There's other ways that you can do move around to orthographic views. If you want to say look just at the top of your model here, that can be useful. So I can come over here to the Z, and I can just click right on that Z button. That's going to take me right down to that top view. But you also notice there that it gives me the keyboard shortcut hint there that number pad 7 will also do that. So if you have a full-sized number pad, I think this is actually by far the fastest way to do that. I'm going to hit the 7 key on my full-size keyboard, and that's going to pop me to top view. The 1 key is going to bring me into front view, 3 is side view, and we're going to talk about this 0 button over here. That's going to jump you into the camera view. We're going to talk about the camera next on here. So if you forget those keyboard shortcuts or you don't have a full-size keyboard, you can also use the grave tilde key. That's directly below escape, right above your tab key. If you hold that button down, you get the same little pie menu over here, and you can say, all right, I want to go to the right view on there, and that's going to just pop you right over to that right view. If you want to move out of this view back into just a regular perspective view, just click and drag, and you'll move yourself back into an orbit view. All right, so now we've got the basic navigations down. Let's go and take a look at the camera. I'm going to select this camera. Oh, and by the way, I have this blue background in my scene. I have a lot more tabs and things than you probably do just because I've got various add-ons turned on. Don't worry about that. Pretty much the fundamentals that I'm showing you will all be basically the same. So here is the camera selected. The first thing I want to do is actually set up our camera a little bit. And the reason for that is you can really think about the camera almost like as an afterthought when you're modeling. You can spend a whole bunch of time making a big scene, and then you spend an hour or two doing a little block out, and then you jump into the camera and you're like, oh, I can't see hardly any of this. Like, why did I make all these other objects here that I can't really see in my camera view? So let's set up our camera ahead of time. Now, I have the camera selected in the scene. You can see that it's selected because it's got this orange on it here. If I come over here and select the cube, you can see how it has the orange highlight around that cube. Selecting the camera there makes the camera turn orange. You'll also notice that there's the outliner over here, and I can select the cube by clicking on it over here. I can select the lights. I can select my guy off to the side there. He's over off to the side view. You can see he's selected there. And I can come back over here and select the camera just by clicking on it in the list. So you can click on things in the viewport, or you can click on things in this outliner. Both of them will select things. You have to have the camera selected for this next step. You'll notice that with the camera selected, I can look down over here and find this little green movie camera icon there. And the lights have the same kind of thing. If you click over here on a light, there's like a little green light bulb. There's various kinds of menus here that are unique to certain kinds of objects, and a camera is one of those. So with this camera selected in the viewport, find that little green button and go and click on it. There's a lot of things that you can do here to change the way the camera setup works. We're just going to change one thing right now. So let's find this focal length over here. You see it's set to 55 millimeters. That's okay if it's a close-up of a character or a product or something that the camera's really close to, but we're doing a big scene here, so we probably don't want it to be 55 millimeters. I'm going to go ahead and hit my 0 key, move my cursor over into this menu here, so hitting the 0 key will jump me into that camera view. I'm not like looking through the viewfinder of that camera. If I were to hit F12 right now, it's going to render out that scene. Again, not very exciting. I'm going to come over here and click this little closed box there to get rid of it, and I'm looking through the camera. But look what happens here when we shift the focal length from 50 millimeters. I'm just clicking in this field, and I'm just going to type in 30. Just type in 30 and then hit enter or return, and you can see that like, oh, okay, right? We kind of got a lot wider view into our scene. And you can, make this very extreme. You can kind of do like 10 degrees and kind of get like a GoPro, extreme wide angle lens there. You got lots of things that you can do, but I think 30 degrees is kind of good for what we're working on. So just set that up first, set that up ahead of time so that you can look through your camera, and then you won't be modeling things that aren't going to be in your camera view. Well, how do you move your camera around? Well, there's a lot of ways you can do it. You can physically just grab it and just move it around. You can do that over here. Or one of my favorite ways to do it, if you just jump into the camera, is to jump into the game mode. And you can use the Shift and tilde key. So if you hold Shift and tilde down, remember tilde is right above tab, Shift and tilde, and now all you need to do is just move your mouse around. You don't have to click or anything. You just move your mouse around and you're like looking through the viewport just like you were playing a game. And just like a game, the W key is going to move you forward, S is going to move you backward, A is going to strafe to the left, and D to the right, and then Q is going to lower your camera view, and E is going to raise it up. So you want to look kind of a drone shot or whatever. So you can just kind of get your camera just sort of set up, even if you don't have a scene yet, just kind of get into a situation where it's like, yeah, maybe kind of something like that. And then just left click or hit the enter key to tell it that you're done with that. There's a lot of different ways for you to move the camera around, but I think that's one of the fastest and the easiest just to get started with. So now that we have our camera set up, let's go ahead and start modeling our scene. So I'm going to push this guy back over here a little bit more so we've got a little bit more room. I'm going to just pull out of the camera view, and I'm going to come over here and grab this default cube. Now, one of the things to be aware of here, one more keyboard shortcut for you, is that you want to take a look at this little menu over here. You can see there's object mode, and if I pop that open, you can see the one right below that is edit mode. And you do this so often, you probably don't want to be reaching up there every single time. You just want to learn the keyboard shortcut tab. So tab in a default workspace is going to take you into edit mode when you have something selected, and then if you hit it again, it's going to take you back into object mode. Nothing selected, you're just going to go back to the last thing you had selected. If I want to edit my little guy over here, I can select him, and now you can see I can come in here and move all the vertices and faces and things around. But I'm going to jump out of that, grab the cube here, and I'm going to hit that tab key. And you know you're in edit mode when you see the edges and the vertices appear. There's a whole lot more buttons down the left-hand side here when you're in edit mode. And if you're ever not sure, just go ahead and take a look up over here in the corner, and it'll tell you that you're in edit mode. So the first thing I want us to do is just to kind of scale this up and flatten this down. So we're going to take a look at this little magnet over here. We're going to pop this open, and we're going to see that we have, this is our snapping tools. I'm going to set the snapping to increment right now. That means it's going to snap to the grid. So we've got this little square grid over here. That's going to make making our little modular scene a lot easier. We can just kind of make some big shapes and kind of snap to them, so we're not, fussing with trying to make all the edges and things match. So if I make sure that that is selected to increment, and then make sure that move, rotate, and scale down here at the bottom. We want those things to be affected. So I can turn on this automatically by just clicking on that little magnet button there. You can see how it turned blue. That tells you that it's working now. Or what might be better is to hold the control key down when you're ready to snap on these things. So the first thing I'm going to do now is just scale this whole thing. I'm going to hit the A key if it's not all selected. That's not all selected. Hitting the A key selects all. And if it's all got this kind of like peachy color going on there, you can see that it is selected. And let's just scale the whole thing up 4 times. So I'm going to do that by hitting the S key, and I could just click and drag here, but that would be imprecise. I can type in the 4, just the 4 key, and then hit enter. And now I know that I'm still snapped perfectly to the grid. It's kind of hard to see with the perspective on, but it's like you can see I'm right there snapped to that grid. That'll make all the next steps a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do now is just make sure that I'm in the face mode over here. You can see that there is a vertex mode, an edge mode, and a face mode. If you hold the 1 exclamation point key, 1 above your QWERTY keys there, that'll bring you into the vertex mode. Hitting the 2 with the @ sign on it, that will bring you into the edge mode, and 3 with the hashtag, the pound sign, that'll move you into that. You can come here and click on these buttons, but I think it's a good idea to get into that 1, 2, 3 keyboard shortcut. So I'm going to select this top face, and now you can see why it's so handy to have this little gizmo on here, because I can just click on that blue arrow and just push it way down until it's kind of like a little slab down here. This is going to become our floors, our ceilings, and our walls. But we do want to move over here into a front view, so I can come over here and click on one of these little the red or the green ball over here on the compass, or I can use the 1 key on my full-size keyboard, or I can hold the tilde key down and go into front or right would do the same thing. Right or left, those are fine. Any one of those where you're looking at it this way. And you can see that's like, oh yeah, okay, we're kind of like down below the floor here. This red line is our floor. So I'm going to just grab a marquee around all these things, and I'm just going to yank this guy up. Whoops, I don't want to do that, because what I just did right there is I've just grabbed the front faces over there, and that's made the whole thing slanted. So what I want to actually do here is hit the A key to select all. So I've got all of those things selected. You can also come over here and use this little X-ray view, but we'll talk about that at some other point. I'm just going to grab the blue arrow, and I'm just going to eyeball it. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going to make it, actually looks like it's pretty good there. It's snapped right to that, the floors right there on that red axis. Now there's one last thing we got to fix over here. You can see this little orange dot right there. Because we're moving these things around in edit mode, that's the center of the original cube. We actually want to put this in the center of our current cube. So I'm going to hit the tab key to get out of this view here. I'm going to hit the tab key to go back into object mode. See that I'm in object mode now. The buttons are a lot shorter. Just hit that tab key, edit mode, object mode. And then what I'm going to do is right click on that slab there, and you can see right underneath my cursor there it says set origin. I didn't even need to do anything. It was right there where I clicked. So I'm going to set origin, and I want to do is origin to geometry, and that little orange dot is going to jump right to the center of my little slab now. So if I do that, origin to geometry, there it is right now. And don't worry too much about how that works. The reason why we want to make sure that we do that with something that we're going to be modular like this is now you can see it's right in the center of this object. So if I were to go to rotate it right now, see how it's pivoting it on that point? That makes it a lot easier than if I were to go over here and rotate it. Now see, like that's a little awkward. I mean, it still works, but it's pivoting it on that different position. So we don't want that. So I'm going to right click and say set origin, origin to geometry, and it's going to put it right smack dab in the center of that floor object. So that's great. Okay, so let's now make our little floor. So what I'm going to do over here is make a duplicate of this. So watch me do this before you do it yourself, because there's a little bit of trick. If we're going to use our snapping, in fact, I'll just turn on the snapping for right now rather than hold the control key down. I'm just going to click on the little magnet. It's turned blue. So now I know that it's snapping. And I'm going to use the Shift D to duplicate. So I'm going to do Shift D to make a duplicate, and then I'm just going to hit Enter right away, or left click. I would hit Enter or Return rather than left click. It will work with left click, but you might just move the mouse a little bit and it'll be a little wonky. Probably not going to happen with our snapping on, which is a good thing. But if you didn't have the snapping on, you might bump it a little bit and it's not going to be perfect. But with the snapping on, remember, set to increment so that we can we're moving along the grid over here. Now I can grab this the green arrow on here, and now see there's two there. I made a copy and I put that copy exactly on top of the other one. You see this weird kind of like diagonal lines there? That's what's called Z fighting or pixel fighting. That just means that those two slabs are in exactly the same spot. So it's trying to draw them both at the same time. So all we need to do is just keep on going over here until we can see how it like snapped perfectly. I overshot it there a little bit, but I just pulled it back. And now it's like perfectly snapped to that other edge. And I can keep on doing this. There's other ways to make, I can use a duplicate array, that kind of thing. Other ways to make these floors, but when you're kind of first getting started here, just try that Shift D to make a duplicate, hit Enter. And I've got two right there, so now I can grab this green arrow and I can just pull out another one. I can do this with multiple ones at a time too. I can hold the Shift key down and click on all three of these, and I can do Shift D and click, and then I can grab another pair out going in the other direction. In fact, let's do that one more time. Shift D and we'll click, and we'll make a little 9x9 grid over here for our floor. So there we go. There we go. There's our floor. We can look through our camera there. We're kind of looking at, the edge of our floor, but we can mess with that later on. But let's go ahead and turn this into a ceiling and then some walls. So what I can do is Shift Select. I can just hold the Shift key and just right click on all 9 of these. There's a lot of ways to select things in Blender. Let's just keep it simple for right now. Just use the Shift key to keep on selecting until I have all of them. And then I can do Shift D to duplicate and hit Enter. And now I can just yank this guy up in the air a little bit here. We can figure out how high we want our ceilings to be later on, but we'll just stick it in there for now. And now let's go ahead and use this to make some walls. So I'm going to do that again. Shift D, hit the Enter key, and this time what I want to do is rotate. I want to rotate this wall 90 degrees. I want to take this and swing it around. Remember, there's two on here right now. I made a copy in the exact same spot. So what I'm going to do is pivot this around, and I want to use the rotate command. So the easiest way to do that, well, actually the easiest way to do that is just to jump into front view, and then you could just hit R to rotate and type in 90. But I want to show you the other way to do that, because sometimes it's not always convenient to jump into one of the orthographic views. And know that, see, there's this green axis going on right here. So what I would really want to do is use that green axis. I want to tip it so that this end goes down toward the floor over here, right? So what I'm going to do is hit the R key to rotate. And if I rotate right now, I'm just sort of spinning it relative to the camera view, and that's kind of useless. I mean, that looks kind of cool maybe, if you're just kind of blocking out like an abstract space or whatever. But we want to keep this a little bit more orderly. So I'm going to type in R, and this time I'm going to type in the Y key after that. So, oops, hang on, R, and then Y, and then now I can rotate it all the way around on just that green axis. See that green line popped in there right down the middle of my floor? And you can just either just eyeball it, or it might even be better is, I'll just undo that and do it one more time. R, Y, and 90. And if you type in 90 and then hit enter, now you know that you've got a perfect 90-degree rotation for your walls. So I can take this guy and just snap it over till it's on the other side. And you can do that with as many walls as you want. In fact, let's go ahead and do that again. So I'm going to come over here and say Shift D, hit enter, and this time I want to spin it 90 degrees so I've got a wall going this way, kind of on the other side of our little view there. That means I want to spin it on that blue Z axis, right? Remember, you can always look up over here if you forget the letters. So I want to spin it this time. So I'm going to say R, Z, see the blue line popped up there now vertically. That's where it's going to spin on. Type in 90 again. Perfect. Hit your enter key and you're good to go. And you can use these little arrows to kind of pop these around, and look at that with the snapping turned on, like we don't even have to really even do anything. There we've got our walls on our scene. So that's pretty much what I wanted to show you for this first view, except let's just go ahead and pop in a couple of doors in here. So there's a lot of different ways that we could make some doors. The easiest thing to do maybe would be just to grab like two of these. Well, maybe I'll put it right over here. Let's put a door right here. Well, I could just grab the red axis on this here. Whoops, that's optical illusion there. What I really wanted was the green axis. That's the Y axis. I'm just going to grab that guy and it's going to snap it down a couple of times till I've got the, and if by the way the snapping gets in your way and you're like, stop, I don't want the snapping anymore, we'll just turn it off. You can always hold the control key down if you wanted to snap again. But now I've kind of opened up this little door off to the side over here just by making a little gap. And I might say like, all right, well, what happens if I make a door over here? But I don't want to make this, I want this door to be the same, but I want to put another door over here. Well, other thing you can do is scale this wall here. So I'm going to go ahead and scale it, but I only want to scale it in one direction. Which direction do I want to scale it in? That green Y axis again. So we can, just like rotation, I can do S, and I can type in Y to lock it down just to that axis. And see, now I can make this narrower, or wider based on just that axis. So I can make a wall kind of like, I don't know, what do I want to do? Something like that maybe. And I can scooch it over. So now I've got like two doors that are kind of roughly the same. Whoops, I fell through my ceiling there. Two doors that are roughly the same size just by shrinking one of the walls down again. Again, you can do this with anything you want. You can grab one of these. I'm going to turn off the snapping, and I can make a little platform up over here. I can make a little balcony level. I'll show you how to make some stairs here in a little bit. But you can kind of use this sort of almost like Lego block view. Let's grab our camera here. I'm going to jump into the camera view, and I'm going to use the zoom key. By the way, if you have the home button on your keyboard, you can hit the home button. That kind of just fills your screen. This little brighter dotted area here is what's going to render. So if I hit F12 right now, we're going to see my little dude and some floor over there. Not very exciting, but I'm going to now, actually, let's bring my little dude back into it. I'm going to go ahead and put him over here. Just going to slide him over. I want to put him kind of in this shaft of light by the door, like at the beginning of the video. We'll put him over here in kind of a little interesting shaft of light. And I want to kind of look at him over here. I want to move the camera over this way a little bit. So I'm going to jump into the camera. Remember that shift and tilde, shift grave. I'm going to use the D key to kind of drive my way over here. And I'm going to use the W key to move in a little closer, something like that maybe. I don't know. It's kind of hard to see this far zoomed out. We'll just do, I don't know, something like that for right now. Hit the home button to zoom in a little bit there so I can see it. So now if I were to hit F12 and render it, it's like, okay, well, that's starting to look a little bit more interesting. I'm using the Cycles render engine there, so you get that little bit of noise for a little bit, but not very much exciting happening with our lights, but we are already starting to make a little gray box in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this video right there. So now you know how to maneuver around the space. You know how to take the default cube and kind of make some floors and walls, and how to move your camera around in the scene to get ready for your rendering so you can do your paint overs. We're going to jump in the next video. I'm going to show you how to use the default cube and the bevel option to make some staircases, and we're going to do a very simple modifier in creating a duplicate array.